Howdy, everybody. Okay. Open discussion time. I guess I don't need the topic that pisses people off on. There we go. Open discussion time. Oh dear, oh dear. I'll just keep on playing music until I think of something else to do. Nice song. Well, I think it's time for a break, don't you think? A break from the music. So what we'll do, look what I've got for you. I have, oh, you can't even see it there, what it is. Hold on a second. Two, there we go. There we go. Okay. I have, sorry, the Times of Israel. So we'll do some current events, see what's happening. So there's analysis by Lazar Berman. In seventh round of nuclear talks, Iran's intentions will finally become clear. Shall we read on? Okay, let's read on. Negotiators will meet in Vienna on Monday for the first indirect nuclear talks between Iran and the US in nearly 6 months. The hiatus was much longer than originally anticipated, and in the interim, an agreement continues to look ever more unlikely. Some, like Israel, believe Iran is deliberately stalling on talks to give itself time to build up its nuclear capacity. However, others believe that Iranians themselves do not yet know if they want to return to the original nuclear deal or how to get there. Senior diplomats from Britain, China, France, Germany, and Russia plan to meet Iranian officials in Vienna on Monday to discuss bringing Tehran back into compliance with the 2015 deal known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which eased sanctions on Iran in return for curbs on its nuclear program. The talks could pave the way for the US to rejoin the accord. The United States pulled out under former President Donald Trump and reimposed sanctions on Iran, prompting Tehran to abandon all the limits the deal placed on it. That has raised tensions across the wider Mideast, as Israel has warned it won't allow Iran to be able to obtain a nuclear weapon. As summer turned into fall, Iran pressed on towards nuclear weapons capability. The International Atomic Energy Agency reported earlier this month that Iran had significantly increased its stockpile of highly enriched uranium in recent weeks, reaching 113.8 kilograms or 251 pounds, enriched to 20%, up from 84.3 kilograms or 186 pounds in September, and 17.7 kilograms or 39 pounds enriched up to 60%, up from 10 kilograms or 22 pounds. Every 3 months we wake up and discover that they've advanced, said Raz Zimt, an Iran scholar at the Institute for National Security Studies. What did we expect? Regarding fissile material, they are very close, said Zimt, estimating that it would take 3 to 4 weeks to enrich enough uranium for a nuclear weapon. They would still have to build a detonator and a delivery system, which could take up to 2 years. What's more, it remains unclear whether Iran even wants a deal or whether it is stalling for time, as Israel argues, to continue to enrich. Iran wants to appear interested in negotiation and agreement, said Eitan Gilboa of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. But it's not clear at all they are willing to make the concessions necessary to achieve an agreement. The Islamic Republic is after a full removal of sanctions and immunity from a military strike, said Gilboa, goals that it is unlikely to achieve. Others argue that Iran's leadership, especially Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, has not yet decided what course to take. What has happened over the last year and a half at least, is that Iran is mistrustful, explained Ori Goldberg of Reichman University's Lauder School of Government. I don't think Iran considers the US and the West approaching these negotiations in good faith. I think a lot of what they're doing is trying to figure out if this is genuine and not just dallying for the purpose of increasing their fissionable material stockpile. Even if Khamenei does decide he wants to cut a deal, hardline President Ebrahim Raisi is not going to be an easy negotiating partner. For Raisi, it is politically difficult to be perceived as being as open and welcoming, which wasn't the case for Rouhani, said Goldberg. Raisi has to take into consideration the sentiments of his supporters and the more intransigent members of his administration, he argued. They're going to be a little difficult and ornery about the whole thing, but they still very much want to be there. Iran is not the only country with unreasonable expectations from the talks. While in Morocco last week, Defense Minister Benny Gantz said that in the best-case scenario, a deal would address not only the issue of uranium enrichment, but with missiles and Iran's activities in the region, namely its support for proxies throughout the Middle East. A good deal would be a deal that sealed the holes of the current deal in terms of nuclear enrichment, launch systems, the deal's duration, and what Iran is doing in the region, he said. That is not at all on the table, though US officials have been stressing that time is running out. They are still eager to reach some sort of deal with Iran on the nuclear issue alone. If a narrow agreement on enrichment and inspections is there for the taking, the Biden administration is not about to gum up the works by bringing up new sensitive issues that will take months to discuss. Foreign Minister Yair Lapid, in London and Paris this week for talks on the Vienna negotiations, seems to be taking a more modest approach. In his talks with Boris Johnson and Emmanuel Macron, Lapid will seek to ensure that banking sanctions against Iran remain in place, Channel 13 reported. But Iran is coming to Vienna determined first and foremost to have those very sanctions removed. It is no coincidence that Iran's negotiating team includes the deputy governor of Iran's central bank and senior officials from the trade and economy ministries. Making Israel's position even weaker, US officials seem to be sending messages to Israel not to get in the way of talks. Last week, US officials warned Israel that its attacks against the Iranian nuclear program are counterproductive and have enabled Tehran to rebuild an even more efficient enrichment system, then leaked those warnings to the New York Times. Over the weekend, US defense officials also outed Israel for carrying out a covert operation telling the New York Times that Israel was responsible for a cyber attack against Iran's nationwide fuel system last month. Though expectations are low for significant movement for a deal during this round, there is likely to be one important outcome. In the previous 6 rounds of talks, Iran's unreasonable demands could be explained by Iran wanting to simply play for time as it worked towards a bomb, or by the opposite position that Iran sought a deal but was simply trying to squeeze more concessions out of the US. Now, with the US fast running out of patience, Iran's true intentions will become apparent. If we don't see after this round some sort of flexibility in the Iranian position, then there is no choice but to come to a final conclusion that they don't want to come back to the agreement, said Zimt. And if that turns out to be the case, then what? There is probably no one in the region who actually thinks Joe Biden would even order a military strike on Iran's nuclear program. Senior US officials aren't even trying to go through the motions of trying to make Iran fear an attack. They almost always speak of other options, and not all options being on the table should diplomacy fail. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and his ministers have been trying to convince Iran that a military strike is a possibility, but that too is unlikely. The IDF let its capabilities for such an operation erode and is scrambling to get its operational plans and munitions back in order. But even when the military is ready, Israel's political and diplomatic reality won't be. Bennett's ideologically unwieldy coalition would likely be torn apart by a strike. Israel's US and European allies, which Bennett and Lapid have been working hard to win over, will be furious that Israel is pulling them into a seething Middle East when they'd rather be dealing with COVID, energy prices, and the economy. If a military strike is not Plan B, the other options aren't likely to change Iranian behavior. The US could try to add more sanctions with Chinese and Russian support, and it can try to increase pressure through UN Security Council resolutions. It could also agree to a limited less for less deal with Iran that only deals with specific aspects of Tehran's nuclear program. Or the Biden administration will lose its nerve and try to break the diplomatic logjam by removing sanctions up front. The US will pay in cash and get checks in return, predicted Gilboa. Right, that was Israeli news item number 1. I will continue waiting for anyone to join. And until then, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put on that famous timer that I have. And I will, let's see, how much should I put on the timer? Let's give it, I'll just throw on there 15 minutes. No, yeah, 15 minutes. If in 15 minutes, if you want to get, use the chat. Use the chat to get hold of me. And we'll be grateful. Okay. Where is that timer? I want the 15-minute timer. All right, there it is. Alrighty, here it is. Your 15-minute timer is on, and here we go. Okay, I tell you what. We'll get back to a little bit more about Israel, some Israel news, and then we'll go back to the music until somebody decides they want to join in and have a chat. That's okay. Right, so the headline from the Times of Israel is Shin Bet, which is the Israeli Internal Security Service, boosts security for religious affairs minister threatened over reforms. Death threats made against Matan Kahana as he pushes to make deep changes to Israel's religious status quo. What's going on here? So let's have a look. The Shin Bet Security Service informed Religious Affairs Minister Matan Kahana on Sunday that his level of security was being raised and that from now on he would be accompanied by a personal bodyguard, the minister's office said in a statement. The announcement, the statement said, came following fresh death threats made against Kahana as he pushes ahead with profound reforms of Israel's religious services that are deeply unpopular with the country's ultra-Orthodox community. Among Kahana's plans is to overhaul Israel's kashrut supervision process, revamp local religious councils to ensure more roles for women, reform the vexatious issue of conversions to Judaism, and enable the ultra-Orthodox community to more easily enter the workforce. The threats against Kahana appear to be part of a scathing, months-long online campaign launched against Kahana's Yamina party for joining the new government that ousted Benjamin Netanyahu after 12 consecutive years in power. Benjamin Netanyahu, lost my place there. Netanyahu's Likud and allied factions have accused Yamina of betraying the right in joining a coalition that includes other right-wing, centrist, and left-wing parties, plus an Islamist faction. Earlier this month, coalition whip MK Idit Silman, also from Yamina, filed a formal complaint with the Knesset guard after she said she was physically attacked by a man at a gas station in the central city of Modi'in. Silman also filed a formal notification with the Knesset guard of the threats made against her on various occasions since September 25 and throughout October in the build-up to a vote on passing the state budget. After the opposition, including Netanyahu himself, raised doubts about Silman's account, the coalition whip appeared Saturday on Channel 12 News to clarify the incident and insist she was telling the truth. A man grabbed me after I was refueling at the gas station in Modi'in and just slammed me into a car. At that moment, I realized how dangerous the words traitors and thieves can be and can eventually cost human life, she said. In June, as the final details of the coalition agreement that ousted Netanyahu were being negotiated, Silman claimed that she had been followed by another vehicle while driving. At the time, Bennett and Yamina number 2 Ayelet Shaked, who is the interior minister, both received increased security following threats. Meretz member Tamar Zandberg, the Environment Protection Minister, was forced to flee her home at one point due to threats made against her and her daughter. Well, that kind of sucks, doesn't it? So what I'll do is I'll put the timer back to 15 minutes. Anybody who joins immediately, just, I'll stop the timer and get going with the room. You can enjoy music for 15 minutes, join the chat room right away. After 15 minutes, I will come back and read some more news from Israel, just as you want. Alrighty, so enjoy the tunes, and hopefully we'll see you before the 15 minutes is up. Okay. Sorry, but I have to reset the timer because I have to take my dog out for her nightly pee. So I'm going to do that, and I'll reset the timer. Hopefully, I'll be back. I actually should be back in just a few minutes because it's nighttime. It's probably wet out there, and I'll just come back soon. When we come back, we'll see if anybody writes something in the chat so that I could get the feeling of what's going on in the chat. If right now there's one person, thank you. But yeah, I'll just reset it. Sorry, I didn't anticipate the break. Thank you though.